Welcome back, boxing fans. This is my new look. I'm trying to be the Asian ego, wearing my shades inside. Actually, there's so much glare off my screen that this kind of was helpful. When I was doing this, it was like, wow, a little over the top. But I don't want to be that much of a douche because we all know what we think about ego. So let's just try to pull it off in a normal day. If I squint a bit, do apologize. So obviously we saw this card. This is based on Matchroom Queensberry big signing that the undercard of Better BF Bivol is finally done and dusted. And this little mini tournament that's set up has been all the talk of YouTube boxing community over the last week. So I thought I'd get into it, give my feelings and predictions on these particular matchups, and just talk about the card overall. I did see, obviously, Eddie Hearn and those guys talking about how this is the best card in boxing history. I saw Hatman came out to sort of put things into historical context and gave quite a few cards from back in the day that sort of obviously outmaneuvered this card and definitely put it in its place. But to be fair, a lot of people that jump on these cards and talk about these pay-per-views that now we're watching and fanboy for particular cards, these guys weren't really boxing fans in the 90s. So, it's not a surprise that they don't understand that at one time boxing was huge. The cards were stacked and there was tons of great fighters on these cards. So when you paid for a pay-per-view, you were really paying for something well worth watching. Obviously, things have changed. Now, once in a while, we get a great card like this one and some other ones. And we, of course, enjoy them because it's not the norm. So let's get into this, break it down, take a peek, and discuss what's going on in boxing. So here we go. Eddie Hearn, Queensberry versus, Matchroom, 5-on-5. And I think this is a great concept, so much so that they're even going to do one of these 5-on-5 cards in the UK. And I definitely think this card that they put together is not potentially the best of the 5-on-5. I think a lot of the really big fights that are going to be on the next 5-on-5, based, I think, in the O2 Arena in London, UK. I think they're holding off and saving quite a few of those big events because they feel that obviously for the UK market, you need to really bring something special. Whereas obviously this is Saudi Arabia, the pockets are deep. You don't expect to bring lots of fans to Saudi Arabia to specifically watch these events. So most of the attention is coming from abroad. So, you need to be a little more Americanized, have a little more American content to sort of attract a global audience. Whereas the UK crowd, I think it's going to be far more UK focused. But let me know in the comment sections if you think that's true or not. Obviously, your input is valuable and it's an important part of my channel. Cheers. Okay. So let's get to this. We can see the card right here. Obviously, two heavyweight clashes, which we know Saudi Arabia is really into heavyweight matchups. A light heavyweight match, a middleweight match, and a featherweight match. So we're really getting a good cross division of the boxing, divisions. The light guys all the way to the big guys. So let's start on the top and move our way down. Obviously, Jile Zhang fighting Deontay Wilder. This could turn out to be a great fight, or it could turn out to be a bore fest, hug fest, slow dance, a waltz. Obviously, both of these guys are coming off of less than spectacular performances against Joe Parker in their last fights. And that's one thing, that's fine. I appreciate the money men and the promoters giving these guys another bounce back chance. That's really what I think is important for promoters. Just because a fighter loses doesn't mean all of a sudden he falls off the map and we no longer see him highlighted on events. I mean, if you're going to put guys in really big fights where they could potentially lose, they should be guaranteed something afterwards, right? More money coming in, more opportunities. So I'm glad to see both Wilder and Zhang get this opportunity. It's a very intriguing fight. And this is obviously, when you think about the whole card, probably the biggest fight on all of the cards. Obviously, Wilder and Zhang being heavyweights, China and America. You're pulling a lot of eyes towards this event specifically because of this matchup. Whereas we know Beterbiev and Bivol is one of the most highly anticipated boxing matches over the last 5 years, undisputed light heavyweight championship. But in saying that, both of these fighters are Russian, don't necessarily get a huge fan base in the UK or in the United States, which is why this fight is happening in Saudi Arabia. So thank you very much, Turki Ali Sheikh, for backing this fight. It's a fight that definitely needed to happen, and I'm happy that somebody saw that as well as myself and many other hardcore fans. Zhang versus Wilder. Interesting enough, for Eddie Hearn, he made Deontay Wilder his captain, which means in this tournament-style team event, Deontay Wilder potentially could win double points for the Matchroom team if he wins. I'm not sure what Frank Warren did and who his captain is. It's probably Daniel Dubois. You probably put him on the other side so you don't have your captain matching the other captain. Or maybe it's Nick Ball. I'm not sure who he did. If anyone knows, please leave in the comment section below. But it's interesting. It's going to be this little mini tournament. If you watch a lot of amateur boxing, you see that a lot of the fighters that basically between big events like the World Games or the Olympics, a lot of what these amateur fighters do is tournament style boxing, where they will go to other countries and match up their best fighters against their best fighters. And this is to generate more money for these boxers during the off season, which is a good idea. I've seen quite a few events with Cuban fighters and other people involved. They also have those semi-pro sort of tournaments like the World Boxing Series that also did this kind of team format as well. So it's a similar sort of thing. It's nice that it's being brought to professional boxing. It'll be interesting to see how this unfolds. It would be great to see the Americans do something similar. Say do Top Rank versus PBC, right? A 5-on-5 card, pay-per-view in the United States. Like, just imagine some of the potential matchups you could do there, right? Teofimo Lopez versus Tank Davis, the headline fight. Tell me that shit wouldn't be fucking dynamite, right? Dynamite. Then you do like Andy Ruiz versus Big Baby Anderson. I know that's quite a big step up for Anderson, but they're talking about moving him to a step up kind of fight. And stylistically, I think Andy Ruiz works out well for Anderson, except we know Andy's tough, resilient game. So he's definitely going to probably go the distance with Big Baby and give him some moments of, you know, truth. So that potentially could be a great thing as well. And I'm sure we could think of quite a few other great matchups to put on that card. So let's knock on wood and just hope that something like that could happen, because that would be great for American boxing. Really excellent. And you could really highlight quite a few up and coming fighters as well. But let's move forward. So you have Zhang Wilder. As far as this fight, it's a tough fight to predict, right? Both of these guys have the power to get rid of each other, but yet both of them don't really have high volume. So it's probably going to be a very slow chess match type of fight early on, waiting for the one opportunity where somebody can throw a punch. The one thing we can say that definitely benefits Wilder is he's a much faster fighter than Zhang. And whereas Wilder's legs are shot, he doesn't have to worry too much about Zhang in that aspect, because Zhang's feet are super slow. The one thing Zhang is going to have to try to do is kind of do similar to what Tyson Fury did, use his physicality and his weight to lean on Wilder, and not even necessarily throw punches, you know, where he has to use his energy, but just use his size and his weight, his girth, just to really take the energy and zap the energy out of Wilder. And if he can be effective doing that, it'll be interesting to see how Wilder would deal with it. And, you know, who's really going to come in and show some real dog in this fight, because both of their performances were very disappointing against Joseph Parker. So at this point, I'm not really sure who I think is going to win, right? I see ways both of them could win. I'm kind of leaning obviously more to Deontay Wilder because of his speed. And I think if you can get your shot there faster, that's going to be definitely beneficial, right? And we know he could do that more than Zhang. Zhang obviously did well against Joe Joyce, but Joe Joyce himself is a super fucking robotic, slow ass fighter, which was kind of tailor made in a sense for Zhang. Obviously, the faster, more volume puncher fighter like Parker was just too much for him. When he couldn't get him out early, then he just couldn't cope with that pace. He's not going to have to worry about that pace with Wilder, but it'll be interesting to see how it unfolds. For the second fight, and this one is probably the most interesting fight on the card by a country mile. Daniel Dubois versus Filip Hrgović. Here you're talking about not two over-the-hill heavyweights who are obviously just looking for a big payday. Here you're talking about potentially the next group of dominant heavyweight boxers. Obviously, we saw Daniel Dubois get beat by Joe Joyce, but Joe Joyce is a behemoth, hard puncher, a punishing jab. Dubois obviously was young at that point and didn't have a lot of experience against high-level fighters, whereas Joyce has been in with the best of the best for years and years and years as an amateur. And obviously now, stepping in to face Hrgović, another amateur fighter with tons of pedigree. It'll be interesting to see if Daniel Dubois has improved and can now deal with a very seasoned, big, physical amateur standout like Hrgović. He couldn't with Joyce, so let's see if he can with Hrgović. If we want to really match up Joyce and Hrgović together, we have a common opponent. You can look at Zhang as an opponent. Zhang, many people feel beat Hrgović. And did he drop Hrgović? Maybe. But the reality is Hrgović showed a great chin, toughness, and a real dog, and was able to go the whole distance with Zhang and really gave as well as he got. And that's why really I think the judges leaned towards Hrgović. Whereas we saw Joyce get pummeled and destroyed by Zhang. And we know Joyce was a monster, right? But now it really puts into perspective who's really tougher, whose chin was really better, right? Because Hrgović took it and gave it back. The two times Joyce faced it, he crumbled in both examples. So now Daniel Dubois is going to step in with potentially a fighter that's more skilled, tougher, faster. You don't have to be fast to be faster than Joyce. So he's definitely faster than him. So I definitely think this is out of the two fights I've talked about now, I definitely think this fight is far easier for me to predict. I'm definitely picking Filip Hrgović to beat Daniel Dubois. If Dubois is able to beat Hrgović, that would be an unbelievable accomplishment for him and would definitely elevate him right into the top 10 pound for pound level of heavyweight boxers. For Hrgović, I think he's expected to beat Dubois. And if he goes in there and does that and beats Dubois, it's just going to solidify him as one of the top 5 fighters in heavyweight boxing. And I definitely think he is one of the top 5 boxers in heavyweight boxing. Then we get to probably the least interesting out of all the cards. I'm sure the majority of you are just as unaware of Willie Hutchinson as I am. And Craig Richards, we've seen him several times, and we know he's a serviceable domestic level light heavyweight coming out of the UK. Now he's going to obviously face Willie Hutchinson, a Scottish fighter. We know Scotland and the UK. If you don't know, you should know. There's obviously a huge rivalry between them. Scotland, like Ireland, would like Wales, would like nothing more than to beat the shit out of the UK, out of England. So obviously the Willie Hutchinson is going to have quite a bit of domestic support in this fight. As far as this fight playing out globally, well, it's probably going to be one of the first fights showcased. So I don't think really that many people are necessarily going to see it. But what we can say about this fight, as far as the levels, this is probably going to be the most competitive out of all the fights, right? Then, of course, you get Hamza Shiraz against Amo Williams. And this is the fight I was hoping was going to happen. I was very impressed by Hamza Shiraz in his last performance. And Austin Williams, I've been hoping and supporting him a lot. At times he looks great, but other times he looks inconsistent. This is going to be a real big ask for him. He's going to really have to step up to prove himself in this fight. And this is definitely the Queensberry fight that I'm leaning towards. I'm picking Hamza Shiraz to beat Amo Williams, even though I'm not taking anything away from Amo. I definitely think he's got the ability to win the fight. It's just his inconsistency makes me favor the other fighter a little more. And then we get, of course, to Nick Ball coming off of a draw, and Raymond Ford coming off of what a lot of people considered a very fortunate victory in a fight that he was down on the cards. But luckily for him, the ref stopped the fight with less than 10 seconds to go, giving him the knockout victory against his opponent. So it'll be interesting to see how this fight matches up. Raymond Ford showed a lot of dog in him. Nick Ball, like his other opponent, is going to be a very aggressive fighter. The difference is Nick Ball seems far more physically tough and resilient, and looks like he's going to be able to take it much more and not fold in the 12th round the way Ford's last opponent is. But at the same time, the last opponent, Kolmatov, was a far better fighter, a far better amateur, a very high-level amateur boxer, and we saw that against Raymond Ford. When they were boxing, that's really where he was having most of his success. Nick Ball is not on that level. He's pretty short, so Raymond Ford's going to have a ton of reach advantage over him. It's going to be a very similar fight, I think, to what we saw Lemos against Richard Hitchinson's. And it'll be interesting to see if Raymond Ford can do better than Hitchins did, right, against a similar type of opponent, a very aggressive mid-range bomber. So it's a very intriguing matchup for sure. But let's move through. You can definitely see, obviously, this is an undercard of the undisputed light heavyweight matchup. This is one of the fights that I'm most looking forward to this year. I'm really hoping Beterbiev wins, and this is nothing against Bivol. I've always liked Bivol, but stylistically, Bivol is not the kind of fighter that I really get excited to watch, whereas Beterbiev is everything I like in a fighter, right? A stalker, a hard man, good skill set, right? No one would say that he is one-dimensional and unskilled. He's very skilled, great amateur pedigree, and beat guys like Usyk and Kovalev and Vosdik, right? Like, he beat the cream of the crop in the amateurs and then came over to the pros, and at this point is unbeaten with 100% KO ratio. Bivol is going to be a very good boxer, young, prime. Obviously, Beterbiev is going to be 39. So, the question is, how much does he have left, right? And that's really going to be an important aspect to this fight. One guy is going to try to control the range with his feet, his speed, and his boxing ability. The other guy is going to try to use his boxing ability to cut off the ring, have an effective jab to get to that guy, get him to the ropes, trap him so he can throw his bombs, break him down, and stop him late. So it'll be interesting to see how this fight plays out. I am leaning towards Beterbiev because I would like nothing more than to see Beterbiev beat Bivol. That would be fucking dynamite. And then if we could see Benavidez fight the winner, specifically Beterbiev, that would be dynamite. Or Canelo face Beterbiev, that would be dynamite. Beterbiev moving up to cruiserweight to take on Jay Opataya or Zurdo Ramirez, that would be dynamite. Any of those sort of possibilities would be fucking excellent. And I would be very excited with any of them. But we will see what happens. Obviously, a lot of people are going to be favoring Bivol because of his skill set and his youth advantage. So there we go. Beterbiev, 20-0, 20 KOs. When you look at his resume over his last few fights, there's not many fighters in boxing today who've taken on better opponents. When we start all the way from the bottom, Bivol, Callum Smith, Anthony Yard, Joe Smith Jr., Marcus Brown, Adam Dienes, a tough German fighter, Vosdik, Kalachik, very tough fighter, Callum Johnson, Enrico Colling was kind of a co-ed type of fighter, and then obviously Prito, who was just a stayed busy guy, but a good run-of-the-mill middle tier type of dude. When you look at Bivol, currently 22-0, 11 KOs, you can really see the difference stylistically based on the numbers. One guy is a monster. The other guy is a slick, skilled fighter. both coming from the Russian school of boxing, but obviously two very different fighters, very different. When you look at his fights, Cedric Agnew, Trent Broadhurst, Sullivan Barrera, Isaac Chilemba, Jean Pascal, Joe Smith Jr., Gilberto Rivera, Craig Richards, Umar Salmanov, Canelo Alvarez, Gilberto Ramirez, Lyndon Arthur, and now Beterbiev. Bivol as well. He hasn't collected the titles the way Beterbiev has, but what a great resume, right? In 22 fights, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 really good fighters. The only one I wouldn't be so comfortable with is maybe Gilberto Rivera. I can't remember who he is off the top of my head. Maybe I'm not giving him credit. Whereas for Beterbiev, you take away Prito and Koling and Dienes, and who also gave a tough fight, went 10 rounds and showed a lot of heart. And even Koling went 12 rounds before he got stopped. 12 rounds. So even though these guys were the ones you figure would be the least dangerous, they gave him a tough fight as well. This is a great fight. I don't know if it's going to turn into a can't miss and a fight of the year type of fight. If it's as good as Beterbiev versus Fosdick, it'll be very entertaining, and we'll see how it works out. Let me know in the comment section below who you're riding with. Here, of course, is the fight that I think is probably the best fight on the undercard. Dubois, 20-2, 19 KOs, hard puncher, but obviously a guy who's been stopped twice. Once by Usyk, and that fight, it definitely left a lot of people disappointed and feeling that he was a bit of a quitter. You couldn't really say that so much against Joyce, but in the Usyk fight, when it looked like potentially he could get to Usyk, and once he found out that he couldn't, he just crumbled and just quit, right? It wasn't a good look, and he came under harsh criticism because of that. Then, of course, you have Hrgovic, who's 17-0, 14 KOs, never been beat, even though his fight with Zhang was very competitive and easily could have went Zhang's way. You look right here, and you can see definitely how one fighter has a clear way to win, and the other fighter has a clear way to quit, right? Every time he's got stopped, he quit, and he was criticized both times because of it. And a big puncher, tough guy like Hrgovic, you can't really compare him to Daniel Dubois' last opponent, who was just an out-of-shape, fat man who was coming for a payday. So I won't be surprised if Hrgovic gets him out of there probably inside 8 rounds. Let me know if you agree. Then, of course, we have this fight. Raymond Ford, 15-0 with 1 draw, 8 KOs. Showed good power, getting the stoppage late against Komatov. Obviously, a very good fighter, a U.S. amateur, very high skill set, long, skilled, fast. Nick Ball, 19-0, 1 draw. Both guys with draws on their resume, 11 KOs. So a little bit more power on the outside, you would think. But obviously, stylistically, he's a guy that relies much more on power punches, whereas Ford is more of a boxer, right? So it's an interesting matchup. We'll see if Nick Ball can really put the pressure on Ford and see how Ford's able to deal with it. I mean, based on the dog he showed himself to be in the last fight, it should play out to be a great fight. Maybe this is going to be the best fight on the card as far as back and forth, potentially fight of the year. Then, of course, we have this fight, Hamza Shiraz. I'm sure many Americans aren't familiar with him. If you haven't seen him, go check out his last performance. I'm sure you can find it on YouTube. He looked sensational. Very tall and very long for the middleweight division. 19-0, 15 KOs. So obviously, he's the guy with the power advantage going into this fight. Austin Williams, a guy highly, highly touted when he first signed with Matchroom, 16-0, 11 KOs. He's had some up and downs in his career, some acts of youth and unprofessionalism, which sort of slowed his role. But now he's getting his big opportunity. If he's able to beat Hamza Shiraz, then a possible fight for unified middleweight title against Janibek is right there. because literally people have been pushing for Janibek to fight Shiraz quite a bit since Shiraz's last performance. There's even been talk, of course, about Shiraz fighting Smith, right? Smith, Callum Smith, his brother, who obviously is one of the better middleweights, and obviously that would be a huge fight in the UK. So that's potentially another direction we may see Hamza Shiraz go after this fight. Maybe that will be the fight in the UK. If he does get by Amel Williams, they'll do that Smith fight in the UK, which would be obviously a really big fight. And coming off of an impressive performance with Amel Williams, it'll just get juiced up that much more. I am favoring Shiraz. I was really impressed by his performance. He's really smart kid, intelligent, well-spoken. And what I saw, maybe I'm just the flavor of the month, but I was really impressed by his performance. Amel, well, he's fast, physically imposing. He's also shown that he's really inconsistent at times and a little one-dimensional and not able to sort of adjust very much, right? But maybe this kind of opponent is going to bring out the best of him, right? And we've seen that happen a lot in boxing. So this might be the opportunity for him to really, really, really stand up and make a statement, and then potentially get a unified middleweight champion next. Then, of course, we got the Wilder-Zhang fight. Wilder, 43-3-1. Only stopped twice in his losses. 42 knockouts. A behemoth of a puncher. Against Zhang, 26-2-1. 21 KOs. His 2 losses coming to elite fighters. Hrgovic in a fight that could have went his way. Was it a draw or was it a loss? I can't remember. No, I guess it was a loss because Hrgovic didn't have a draw. Who's the draw against? Oh, the American guy, Anthony Joshua, fought, and it looked like fucking Zhang was going to literally die in the ring, right? And then, of course, his loss to Joe Parker. So he's never been stopped. He's tough, resilient. The guy's head is fucking giant, and he can take a lot of punches. So it'll be interesting to see how he's able to take Deontay Wilder's shot. If he can really take Wilder's shot, right, and not get fucking blitzed, I could definitely see him winning the fight. I think, Wilder landing a sweet peach of a right hand and Zhang takes it and absorbs it. I think that could just be the end of Wilder. I think really he would just crumble because he would figure he has no other way to win the fight. And then at that point, potentially could see Zhang physically just use his physicality to sort of beat Wilder up. But at the same time, as I said, Wilder is a much faster fighter, and I do see more opportunities for him to land big shots than I do for Zhang. Even though Zhang is a very experienced fighter, a very high-level amateur, and you saw that against Joyce when he set up that perfect shot to drop Joyce coming out of nowhere. The problem is he needs to fucking have better endurance. He needs to be able to have a higher punch output if he wants to have success against Wilder. So it'll be interesting to see what version of these two guys come out of the ring. Hopefully Wilder leaves the fucking heavy suit in the change room. Then, of course, the fight that most people are unaware of, Willie Hutchinson, 17-1, stopped that one fight, 13 KOs against Craig Richards, 18-3, never been stopped, 1 draw, 11 KOs. I would predict that Willie Hutchinson is going to get stopped in this fight by Craig Richards, who isn't a big puncher, but he's long, skilled. I think he's going to get pressured early by Hutchinson. He's going to take it because he's a more experienced fighter, been in the ring with far higher level of opponents. And eventually, he's just going to start timing Hutchinson, breaking him down, and we see that Hutchinson can get smoked, can get knocked out. And I think just later in this fight, Hutchinson is going to get stopped by Craig Richards. So who are you riding with in these matchups? How do you rate this card overall? I think it's a great card. As I said, I mean, obviously the main event is fucking huge. Having Wilder Zhang under that is a great card or a great fight on this card. It might not turn out to be a great fight, but it's great name recognition and potentially a great matchup. And then, of course, Hrgovic versus Dubois. It's a good fight. This is the kind of fight Hrgovic really needs. And then Ball versus Ford, another great fight, right? Like a really high-level fight. This fight could have been a unified world title fight. So it's good the fight's still happening, and it's good that Raymond Ford understood that this was a big opportunity, so he didn't jump straight up in weight like he was talking about. He's taking this opportunity, as he should. You don't walk away from big money and big opportunities. I don't know why the other slides I put on my pay-per-view, my thing didn't come out. Let me just turn here. Maybe I'll just do that tomorrow, even though it was in regards to Ryan Garcia and Ryan Garcia and Devin Haney. So I don't want to wait too long. That fight's this weekend, so obviously we got to get that shit done. And it's still not showcasing here. What's not? What's wrong with Apple? Aren't you supposed to like move this information right across the board like this? And we're gonna have to like do something. Let's see. Share. Ah. Sorry. Okay, maybe I'll just not share it. I'll just talk about it. So another picture that I wanted to showcase, but for some reason it's not showing, was this great picture. The two teams. Obviously, everybody's seen that. It's just come out recently. I guess I can just change my screen since this damn thing isn't working. There we go. So there you go. The two teams joined up. It's a good picture, just hyping up the two cards and just the significance of this kind of card, you know, us against them. I like it. It's interesting. And then, of course, I was looking at the undercards for the Shakur fight. So let's talk about that. I've seen some people be critical because it is a pay-per-view. And when you compare this to that pay-per-view, I guess you could be critical. But now, of course, my phone dies. Perfect. So never mind. I will save that tomorrow and I'll try to make it so it's a PPT so I can put it here and we can see it bigger, better, and in 3D, 4D, you know, Memorex, whatever. But thanks for watching. Make sure you leave comments below. Tell me your predictions. Let me know what you think about the Bivol Beterbiev fight. Who are you rolling with? And what do you think about this card overall? Do you like the concept? 5-on-5, this promoter versus that promoter. I think that's great. Obviously, the reason this is happening is because of money from the Saudi Arabians, right? I mean, these are two promoters that really hated each other, didn't talk to each other. And then all of a sudden, you know, we're not hearing so much about Frank Warren and Bob Arum working together, making fights. Now it's Frank Warren with his other UK competitor in Eddie Hearn, making great fights. I mean, if we could see Bob Arum and Al Heyman do that in the States, that would be great. I mean, maybe we can talk about that later. What would be the perfect 5-on-5 between Top Rank and Al Heyman's PBC? But maybe you can leave in the comment section below, and I will use your references and your examples in my next video talking about that. So let me know, who would you like to see the PBC Top Rank 5-on-5 card? And what weight classes do you think would be the best? Obviously, right now we think 135, 147. Maybe you can also talk about 126. Heavyweights. And as we mentioned before, maybe that middleweight fight between Shiraz and Janibek. But leave it in the comment section below. Thanks for watching. I will see you next time. Peace out, everyone. Weekend is coming, so enjoy your weekend. Have a good one.